There's a town in Monmouth County, New Jersey, that is smaller than some people's backyards. We're talking under a tenth of a square mile. Basically, one apartment complex, a parking lot, and the sheer audacity to keep calling itself a township. And here's the part that'll break your brain. This microscopic little nothing used to be 1,000 square miles. I'll say that again because it sounds like a lie. Shrewsbury Township, when it was born back in 1693, covered nearly 1,000 square miles. It ran from the Navesink River all the way down to swallow every inch of what's now Ocean County. It was a giant. And then over the next 300 years, it got absolutely devoured, sliced up piece by piece into 74 other towns. Tom's River came out of it, Red Bank, Eatontown, Rumson, Little Silver, all of it carved off the carcass like a Thanksgiving turkey until there was nothing left but the wishbone. And the last indignity? The part that's still legally Shrewsbury Township today is the leftover scrap nobody else bothered to take, an old housing co-op built for the families of Fort Monmouth workers called Camp Vale. When the Army tried to shut it down after World War II, the families just bought the land and kept the original 1693 charter alive out of pure stubbornness. So the single biggest town in New Jersey history, the mother of 74 municipalities and damn near 1 million people, survives today as one neighborhood that refuses to die. That's a houseplant in a legal coma. And it's the perfect place to start because today we're touring the weirdest towns in New Jersey, and it only gets stranger from here. Travel into Union County and you'll find Winfield, which has the distinction of being a town that is also, functionally, a single housing development with a mayor. The whole place is one mutual housing co-op, around 700 units built during World War II to house the guys working the Kearney shipyards. And I don't mean mostly, I mean the town is the development. You don't even really own your house here in the normal sense. You're a co-owner of the entire operation with a perpetual right to your unit, which is a way of saying you own your home, and also you kind of don't. Please stop asking questions, but the truly unhinged part is how it became a town. In 1941, they shoved a bill through the state legislature in a single afternoon, suspended the rules, no debate, boom, it's a municipality. The governor, Charles Edison, took one look at this and vetoed it, calling it a federal island inside New Jersey, which, fair. So what did they do? They overrode his veto that same day. One paper at the time summed it up perfectly. Now Uncle Sam owns a town, and Uncle Sam can't tax himself or vote for himself. An entire municipality born specifically to spite the sitting governor. You have to respect the pettiness. It's the best origin story imaginable. Now we leave the company towns and enter the part of the tour I like to call religious people who took it a little far. Ocean Grove is a section of Neptune Township, right on the water, that the locals have called God's Square Mile since 1869, when a bunch of Methodists decided the Jersey Shore needed less sin and more praying. And here's the thing that makes people think I'm making it up. Every single summer, they still put up 114 canvas tents around the great auditorium, and people live in them. Actual canvas tents attached to a little wooden shed for the kitchen and bathroom, packed shoulder to shoulder on streets too narrow for cars. And you cannot just rent one. There's a waiting list that runs decades. Some people wait 40 years for a tent, and when your number finally comes up, you get interviewed. It runs $4 to $7 grand for the summer. No subletting, no air conditioning, unless you've got a doctor's note. You don't own the land, you don't own much of anything. You've just earned the right to sleep in upscale canvas while a 6,000-seat wooden auditorium plays hymns next door. The demand is genuinely insane, which tells you everything about how starved we all are for a porch and a neighbor who knows your name. Oh, and Ocean Grove is still a dry town, and until 1981, you legally could not drive a car here on a Sunday. That law only died because a guy delivering newspapers got sick of it and sued. The beach stayed closed on Sunday mornings all the way until 2025, when the state finally walked in and said, respectfully, you have to let people touch the ocean now. Down in Burlington County, there's a town that was built from scratch by the family that made the cables for the Brooklyn Bridge. And I want you to sit with how much of a flex that is. The Roeblings made the wire rope that holds up the Brooklyn Bridge, the Golden Gate, the elevators in the Empire State Building. And in 1905, when they needed a place to house the workers at their new steel mill, they didn't find a town, they built one. Charles Roebling laid out 750 brick houses on a grid, planted shade trees down the medians, and dropped in a bank, an inn, a hospital, a bakery, and a jail. The village was the factory's life support system. You were born, employed, housed, and if it came to it, arrested, all under the same logo. But the detail that is so interesting is that your house size was assigned by your rank at the plant. The skilled workers got the bigger homes, set further from the noise of the mill. The bosses lived up on Riverside Avenue, so your standing in the company was literally your address, a public scoreboard of who your superiors were. They sold the place off in 1952. The mill eventually became a Superfund cleanup, and the old front gate where thousands of workers clocked in every day is now a museum. You can drive through the village right now, and the houses still snitch on the old hierarchy. Okay, up on the Berkeley Heights and Watchung line, hidden in the woods, there is a 75-acre anarchist single-tax colony. And I need you to know I'm being completely literal. Free Acres was founded in 1910 by a guy named Bolton Hall, a New York lawyer, Tolstoy fan, friend of Emma Goldman, who once got arrested for handing out birth control pamphlets, so you already know the vibe. He believed in a tax theory where you tax the land and nothing else, and he built a community around it. Here's how it works, and it still works this way. You own your house, but you do not own the land it sits on. The land is held by everybody, collectively. There are 85 lots on 99-year leases. Decisions get made at a monthly town meeting where every leaseholder gets one vote, and critically, fences are forbidden. You cannot fence your yard. The woods are supposed to flow right through everybody's property like one big shared backyard. It started as a summer colony of unheated shacks and tent platforms full of Greenwich Village artists, and it built a reputation. The neighbors took one look at the no fences, communal land, occasionally clothing optional crowd, and started calling it Freak Acres. James Cagney lived here before he was Cagney. So did the author who wrote Topper. One guy lived in a teepee, founded an archery guild with full Robin Hood costumes, and reportedly tried to import acorns from Sherwood Forest so he could grow descendants of Robin Hood's actual trees in New Jersey. And the founder, Bolton Hall, the single-tax true believer, he stormed off in 1936 and never came back because the residents watered down his tax system. The man quit his own utopia over a property tax dispute, which might be the most New Jersey thing that has ever happened. Roosevelt, Western Monmouth County. This one starts as one of the most idealistic things this country ever tried and ends as a punchline, and I love it for that. It was originally called Jersey Homesteads, and it was a New Deal experiment to take a couple hundred Jewish garment workers, most of them committed socialists, out of the New York sweatshops and resettle them in a cooperative town in rural Jersey. And not just any cooperative, a full agro-industrial one. A shared farm, a shared garment factory, a shared store, all owned and run together by the residents. You paid $500 to buy in. Albert Einstein, who lived over in Princeton, sat on the board and lent his name to the thing. There's a famous Ben Shahn mural still hanging in the town school showing the whole dream. So how'd the workers' paradise go? The workers who collectively owned the factory went on strike against the factory, which they owned. They struck against themselves. The Garment Workers Union had actually opposed the project from the start. The whole thing was wildly over budget. And in 1939, the federal government threw up its hands, declared it a failure, and literally tried to auction the place off. They couldn't even sell the factory fixtures. The town survived anyway, got renamed Roosevelt after FDR died, and quietly became an artist colony, a socialist utopia that couldn't make payroll because the owners walked off the job to protest the owners. Beautiful. Helmetta, Middlesex County. There is a town here that exists fundamentally because of snuff. And in case you don't know what snuff is, it's powdered tobacco that you snort up your nose. An entire functioning municipality was built around that. The man behind it was George Washington Helm, a former Confederate general who became a New Orleans lawyer and then somehow the snuff king of New Jersey. In the 1880s, he built a massive red brick snuff mill and a whole town to serve it. Company houses for the workers, a company store where you spent company scrip, churches, a school, all orbiting a factory whose entire purpose was producing nasal tobacco. The mill ran all the way until 1993, and at its peak, it claimed to be the biggest snuff producer on the planet. And the name. He named the town after himself Helm, combined with the name of his daughter Etta. Helm plus Etta, Helmetta. So picture this man surveying his sprawling empire of powdered nose tobacco, this monument to the human sinus, and going, you know what? I'm going to name this after my little girl. Somewhere out there is a woman whose dad's idea of a loving tribute was a snuff town, and it's still on the map. Up in Bergen County, we have Teterboro, which is barely a town at all. It's an airport that happens to have a city council. The population is 61 people. The airport, where private jets and business flights come and go all day, takes up basically the entire borough. The place is named after Walter Teeter, a banker who bought 700 acres of swamp to build a racetrack and a golf course and an airfield, and then the airfield just ate everything else. What's left is a runway, some hangars, and a handful of houses clinging to the edge of it. And the neighbors hate that it exists. For decades, the towns around it, Hasbrook Heights, South Hackensack, have tried to legally dissolve Teterboro and split its carcass between them because that airport generates a gorgeous pile of tax money and everybody wants a slice. There was a serious push in 1966, another one in 2010, every time the 60-odd people who live next to a jet runway link arms and refuse to be erased from the map. At one point, the mayor and the entire town council all lived on the same street because there basically was only one street. Now, I have to take you somewhere darker because no honest list of weird Jersey towns is complete without Vineland. And Vineland's story is genuinely insane. Down in Cumberland County in 1861, a Philadelphia lawyer named Charles K. Landis built Vineland as a temperance utopia, a dry town by design. The property deeds straight up banned selling alcohol, and on top of that, they forced you to build a house within a year and clear and farm your land. He recruited Italian grape growers to come work the soil, which is how the place got the name. The gorgeous irony being that this proudly alcohol-free utopia turned into a grape and wine-making hub, and the grape juice empire that became Welch's basically got its legs there. Build a dry town, accidentally invent the grape juice and wine capital. But here's where it goes off a cliff. The editor of the rival newspaper, a man named Uri Kareth, spent years roasting Landis in print and eventually published that Landis was trying to commit his own pregnant wife to an insane asylum. So in 1875, Landis calmly walked into the newspaper office and shot Carruth in the back of the head. Carruth lingered for months and then died. Landis was tried for murder, and he was found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity in what's considered one of the first insanity defenses in American history. And the grim cherry on top, the autopsy showed the bullet hadn't even killed Carruth. What killed him was the doctors digging around in his skull in the wrong spot looking for it, which gave him a fatal brain infection. Landis walked free, went off and founded Sea Isle City. And when he died, that little murder got quietly left out of his obituary. The founding father of a peace and temperance paradise beat a homicide rap. New Jersey, baby. And we save an absurd one for last. There is a town in Camden County called Tavistock. Population 9. 3 houses, about a quarter of a square mile, and roughly 95% of it is a golf course. Here's why it exists. 100 years ago, the wealthy members of a country club in Haddonfield had a problem. Haddonfield was a dry town with blue laws that banned playing sports on Sundays, and these men could not abide a Sunday without golf. So did they drive somewhere else? Did they take up a Saturday hobby? No. They went to the New Jersey state legislature and got them to carve out an entirely brand new municipality in 1921 for the sole purpose of letting them tee off on the Lord's Day. The bill sailed right through. 2 of the legislators who voted yes were already members of the club. Of course they were. So now there's this perfect little monument to rich guy stubbornness. 9 residents, no school. They pay neighboring Haddonfield to handle their police and fire. The town council meeting is functionally a dinner party. And those 9 people pay the highest property taxes in the entire state of New Jersey. Something like $38,000 a year on average, 4 times the state average. Also that a golf course can technically be its own country. That's the thing about the weirdest towns in Jersey. Every single one of them exists because somebody at some point was so committed to a snuff empire, a tax theory, a tent, a Sunday tea time, that they bent reality and built a town around it, and then they refused to let it die. That's not weird. That's the whole personality of this state in a nutshell. Drop your town in the comments. See you next video.